we'll be. So thank you everyone for joining us on this Friday. It's number 63 of our Connect and Shares, and I'm Laurie Mode. I'm the CEO of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. And firstly, may I pay my respects to our Aboriginal connections in our lands of which we come from today, elders past, present and emerging, and we hope that we can work with them to interpret the many years of history that they have had on this land and bring that for our visitors and our participants in our activities. You've just heard from Employsure, who've given us a little bit of an insight into some of the challenges with vaccination in our workplace, but we encourage you to seek your own advice through the Ombudsman, the Fair Work Ombudsman, or your relevant contacts in relation to that. So quick rundown of some things. You might remember the National Outdoor Education Conference has been postponed until 2022, but we do have this fabulous online event coming up on the 29th of September. It will run from 10:30 to 4, so a bit of a short day, and you'll have 15-minute breaks in between each session to run and get a coffee or something to eat in between. But we have some great subjects and some great speakers. I'm so excited to tell you that Shane Fitzsimmons will be joining us, ex-Commissioner of the Royal Fire Service and now Head of Resilience New South Wales, as well as Pasi Salberg, who you'll know very well from Nature Play, Sharon Goldfeld, Tonya Gray, our very own Tonya from Western Sydney University, the ACARA curriculum review, and also an update on the OCA Summit working groups. And then the final one there, Pasi will give a bit more insight into Nature Play, and we'll also hear from Amanda Lloyd and Christian from Centennial Parklands on some great things they're doing. And a bit of reward, we'll talk about the OEA Awards and probably give a few of them out. So look, I'm not going to run through all the grants. Most of you know that you can reach out to us to assist you with any of the grants and understanding, but just a note for the ACT team members, your grants have increased, and there is now up to 10,000 for employing businesses and 4,000 for non-employing businesses just for this recent lockdown on top of what you had before. But again, reach out if you're not too sure about where you sit with your grants, and the money is starting to roll out there. I've heard from some of you have now been funded through those grants, which is great news. What we need to do now, our risk management group, our committee and our board of directors got together recently to discuss where we sit now. And just quickly, I think what I need to give some points to you all is lead by example. When it comes to these rules, we can see that rule breakers and people that probably haven't complied have left us in where we're sitting now in New South Wales particularly, and now into Victoria. So showcase that, you know, let's start getting some media interactions with your organisations and show how you are leading by example. Show how your business is staying where you are and not going out amongst the 5-kilometre radius. And if we see any of those in Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, we will share them because we've got to get it out there to follow and lead by example. Maintain. As I said, contact us, find out what grants are available for you, we'll help you. The action, and we just briefly spoke about it just before we started the session, but on the mental health side, there is a lot of tools out there that you can help connect with your employees and yourselves. And remember that we all know that the outdoors is a great mental health benefit. So can we just live what we speak and start connecting with your staff and working with one another to get that mental health benefit. And then the final one there is I've got a great initiative that we're going to start, and it's weekly strategy sessions. Very soon we're going to have to work out how we're going to get out of here and also what it's going to look like. So as businesses and managers of your businesses, please let me know if you're interested in being part of this group. It's going to be a regular session every week where managers and business owners can come together and start working out what it's going to look like in the new normal. What have we got to start planning for now? This is going to be a great conversation, but also some idea generation and supporting one another in really what is the outdoor industry going to be like post this lockdown. So again, let me know if you're interested in that. Got some great Connect and Shares coming up next week. Are you compliant with your employees? There's a lot of hidden things that, as I've been inquiring for you in various areas on different legislation, a few little tidbits have come out where I've worried that potentially some of us aren't compliant. So we're going to have a presentation, and that's sponsored by Reckon, which we're very grateful for. They've found a consultant to come and talk to you next week on that. 3rd of September, very excited about this one, Careers New South Wales. The pilot I spoke about some Connect and Shares ago that Service New South Wales is running, and now engaging the outdoor industry. So hopefully we'll start seeing some great advice being given via Service New South Wales on careers in the outdoors, and you'll hear about that on the 3rd of September. And then the 10th of September, an extension of that department is in the training services area, and what they're going to do to help us train up more people for our industry. Our AGM's coming up, 27th of September, 7 p.m. You can now RSVP. All members can certainly come to that, and you'll hear about obviously the results of the past year, but also the plans for the future. And remember that we do have some board member positions available. If you're interested, it closes this Friday, this coming Friday. So jump on that website and nominate or pass it on to someone that you might know. The recent uploads, I don't think I've shared this with you, but this is something, the 2nd of July, this one came out, and it will be in your members' newsletter. So I just wanted to flag to look out for that if you hadn't already seen it. Now we have the beautiful Christina from the University of Queensland, although she's based in New South Wales, which is really good. And she has a fabulous research program coming up, which I have asked her to come and talk to you about, because I know some of you would be quite interested in partaking in this. Christina, I'll hand over to you, Dom.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I'm going to quickly share my screen. Oh, am I able to?
Yep, you should be in now.
Okay, let's see. Right, just give me a second. You think by now I'll have it all sorted, but clearly technology is sometimes fun, sometimes not. Can everyone see this?
No problem at all.
Well, thank you so much, and a very good morning to you all. I hope you all are well and safe during this difficult time. And, you know, one thing I am enjoying about lockdown, though, is that I get to rock my favorite jumper, you know, almost every second day. So, you know, I hope you guys are making the most of whatever you can, and my best wishes and thoughts are with you all. As Laurie beautifully, you know, shared a few words just a few moments ago, my name is Christina, and I'm a researcher from the University of Queensland, and I'm here to talk to you all about a research opportunity that explores the effectiveness of digital health interventions in skin cancer prevention in an outdoor worker setting. And I really would like to, Laurie, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all today about this important research.
Absolute pleasure.
And before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we are meeting from today. I pay my respects to their ancestors and descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. I would also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present among us today. So just to provide you with some context to this research that we are doing, we know that outdoor workers are at great risk of skin cancer, and skin cancer is a global health priority. We know that digital health interventions have been used throughout various research to understand how it can impact good health wellbeing initiatives, and some of us are still trying to understand what digital health interventions are. And digital health interventions are primarily use digital technology and devices, such as smartphones, tablets, portable devices or computers, to deliver information and support, with the aim to support outdoor workers to achieve good health and well-being. So some of these things could be through mobile applications, using websites, or text messaging interventions. what we're doing right now at the University of Queensland is we are seeking to recruit outdoor workplaces and their workers into this study, where we get to really understand what types of interventions have been used by outdoor workplaces and outdoor workers, both within the workplace or outside of the workplace. Some of these interventions may be focused on skin cancer prevention or awareness, or it could also be just about general health well-being. Whatever the intervention is, we want to know, because your voice, your experience, everything that you guys are doing, it definitely matters to us, and it allows us to make well-informed solutions. So we want to know what types of interventions have worked, what are the advantages of these interventions, what are the disadvantages, what are the things that you would like to see in an intervention, and if you know what those preferences might be. There are a few different questions that we ask you guys just to really understand and grasp all that information. So what we are doing is we're trying to recruit workplaces across New South Wales and Queensland, and all outdoor workplaces. We're not really focused on one particular industry. We're looking at all different industries. So from construction to, you know, parks and recreation, to plumbing, to electrical work, to communications, whatever it may be. If you are an outdoor worker who works three or more hours a day, you know, we would love to know what you think about this. Is something that we think is quite important, and we think that digital health interventions, if they are developed in the right way and in a well-informed way, we can find ourselves with a very good solution to not only preventing chronic diseases like skin cancer, but also just, you know, I've awesome presentation by Chris and Nassim, and how they were talking about mental health as well, you know, how that will be something that will be mandated, you know, where workplaces will need to look at policies. So all of this research that we do, you know, it's all translatable. If we find interventions that are working, we'll be able to translate it to not only just, you know, to a chronic illness like skin cancer, but also be able to look at solutions for other diseases. So right now we have about 10 workplaces across New South Wales and Queensland who have agreed to participate in this research. And what it really consists of, it's just a very short online survey where one survey will be provided to the organisation, and one survey will be catered towards outdoor workers within that organisation. It will take only a few minutes for participating workplaces to complete. And yeah, we're really trying to encourage as many outdoor workplaces as we can to participate, because as I said, your voice matters. And I believe that together we can make a change. And, you know, I know during lockdown, it gets a bit difficult, you know, with not having enough staff and, you know, doing all of these things without, you know, having staff face to face. But, you know, that's why we thought having something that is, you know, both available for workplaces and workers online might be another way where workers who aren't working at the moment might even just feel connected to their organisation and feel like they're in a position to contribute as well to research and an important cause. So yeah, I understand you guys have a big agenda. I'm just going to leave you with that information. I hope I haven't spoken too quickly, because sometimes I have a tendency to do that. But if you are interested in participating, if you can maybe, I've got my email address there. So it's c.verma@uqconnect.edu.au. I will very much appreciate if you would be able to send me an email, or if you want to just drop your name, you know, and do a direct message on Zoom. Happy to take your details and be in contact with you.
Awesome. I think you've got a question from either Hugh or Bridie. I'm not going to assume now.
Yes.
Yeah,
please.
Sorry, guys, we'll keep you on your toes a little bit. Christina, this is such a great initiative. It's funny. The last time we were allowed to sort of be at work before we sort of locked down, I was literally sitting around with a group of guides at lunch discussing skin cancers that we'd either kind of looming needed to get cut or burned out, or had just been done, and there was a group of about 6 or 8 of us. And so I think this would be a really good fit. I guess I've got some questions about what you think the digital resources might look like. And I guess an observation that hopefully you've got some comment on, which was something that we found within the group, was there was a real mix of how competent we felt the people that we went to identify these things were. And one of my colleagues sort of said that he literally had something looked at on one day by a skincare specialist, and 2 days later had to go to another doctor for something else who looked at the same thing and went, that's got to come out kind of right now, where the first person had said, looks fine, mate, you'll be right. So I mean, it'd be great to just hear a little bit more what you think about what the electronic things might look like. And
so of course, so this survey is obviously going to be very important for us to understand what type of intervention that we can develop, and that will be the next part of the research. Primarily, we're looking to support outdoor workers in ways that they can promote skin cancer awareness messaging that is consistent with their workplace policy. So, whatever those workplace policies are at the moment, where you have recommendations around sun protection, skin cancer awareness, education, whatever all of these things are, we want to understand what the best method is to get that information across to your workers, because that's obviously going to allow them to both comply. Compliance is such a big thing. How do we know? How are we encouraging our workers to comply? So that's where this intervention is going to be mostly focusing on ways that we could help our workplace comply. So it's very useful to the workplace in that sense. And we're not really going to be focusing on, at this point, it doesn't seem that we're going to be focusing on anything to do with detection, early detection or screening, those type of interventions. It's going to be primarily focused on, the type of, the way to communicate to your workers. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, mate.
Christina, can I ask if you can hang around? Because I know David's got a question for you, but I have a very important person that wants to help us with our understanding of our workplace and vaccines that has to depart in 10 minutes. So I can cut back to you after that. That'd be amazing.
Awesome.
Thanks,
no problem. Thank you.
Everyone, I'm so happy that we have Catt, CEO of ACT Chamber of Commerce, and also Linda Hudson with us today. Presence of royalty, Graham, I'm in absolute awe of what you've been doing at the Chamber of late, and thank you for all your assistance. And thank you for joining us today and helping us answer some of these queries.
Yeah. Hi everybody, no worries, Laurie. I can see I can see about 6 people, but my thing says there's another 12 people or so 18 online. So hi everybody. So I'm Graham. I'm the CEO of the Canberra Business Chamber, and just introducing Linda Hudson, you can see on your screen as well, who is our Workplace Relations Manager. I'm aware so just a little bit about us. So Outdoors New South Wales and ACT are members of the Chamber. We obviously represent businesses in the ACT and in the wider region. So although we're quite Canberra-centric, actually, obviously Queanbeyan, the Yass Valley, and generally the surrounding region, we actually have quite a few members who are New South Wales-based businesses and or not-for-profits that work in the region as well. About 60 of our members are actually not-for-profit organisations, so industry associations or community groups, not just private businesses. Sorry, that's my phone ringing. And so, we basically do 3 things. First, we are an advocate and a policy organisation. We engage with the ACT government, but also the federal government representatives for Canberra and the region. We very much are about networking, about connecting businesses and other organisations with each other. And we're also about sort of providing services and support to businesses. And again, a lot of our members are not-for-profit organisations. And a very key part of that is around the employment relations, human resources, management aspect of things. So Linda, I should say, has had a bit of a baptism of fire. She very recently joined the Chamber, moved from South Australia to Canberra to take up the role, and then has been plunged into a lockdown in a new apartment in a new city. So not only has she been trying to learn the ropes in our organisation, but navigate some pretty trying times as well, as we all have been. But I guess one, we thought we'd probably start today, and I'll say, I know you had a discussion about this a little bit earlier, and I'm not quite sure what was discussed. One of the things that we have produced, we are a member, along with a lot of national industry bodies, of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is essentially the national chamber movement. And working with ACCI, one of the resources that we have recently developed has been a guideline. Obviously, the question of vaccines, the question of can I mandate, how do I manage, what are the issues that come up, are very, very central. So we've actually, can I screen share, Laurie? Does that work?
Yeah,
yep, okay, now. There you go. Thank you. So that's the guide. It looks like this. And you can download it if you want the address. We have an online community at the Chamber, which I will also screen share, which is called the Canberra Business Buzz. And if you visit the Canberra Business Buzz, it's an online community. There's a lot of discussion there around different things that are affecting Canberra businesses, but you can download that vaccination guide there, and it will be updated. What we've found, we've done these in the past. We did this last year when we were in lockdown as well, just dealing with employers' questions about how COVID affected them generally. We found that every week or so we're actually having to iterate and to make some more additions to that resource as new information became available. I'll hand over to Linda to talk through a little bit the kind of questions, I guess, that we're primarily getting from employers at the moment. But the main ones are really around, and this is probably the way this guide is structured, how do we communicate with employees? You know, as businesses particularly, and certainly in ACT, we haven't adopted a position as a chamber, and nor has the National Chamber movement, that vaccines should be mandated in the workforce. Our position still at the moment is, you know, that's a decision for every business and every organisation to make depending on their circumstances. But we certainly believe that, you know, the pathway, and we have been saying for some time, the pathway out of this situation we find ourselves in, the pathway out of lockdowns, out of border closures, out of restrictions, out of all the things that impact everyone on this call, and now basically every business in Canberra and around Australia, is vaccination. So very, very strong advocates for that. So this becomes, you know, so how do businesses work within those? The first one's very much about how you communicate with people. Not only what's legal, but what have we learnt in terms of what works, what's good practice in terms of having those conversations with employees. And I had some feedback from someone the other day that said, actually, you know, they had a lot of tradies, and they said, well, what they had learnt was that tradies actually had no issues at all getting vaccinated, but they had an issue making an appointment. So their strategy was actually they got the wives to make the appointment. And if the wives made the appointment, the tradies went. So there's a lot of practical knowledge, I think, that we're starting to get from employers around, you know, how do you do this, and how do you have different conversations with different types of workers in different settings, and how do you achieve that? The second part is about, you know, the questions that come up a lot are about how do we support or how do we help our staff to get vaccinated? And obviously different workforces, permanent employees, part-time employees, casual employees have very different situations. So not only how do we have the conversation and inform people, but how do we assist people? And, you know, that's a very loaded word. And I'm sure your earlier presentation would have touched on, there are some legal issues and there are some liability issues around there that businesses really need to understand. And the guide tries to unpack that up. And that sort of moves you into, connected to that, are the work health and safety considerations about vaccination. One of the other things that people are wrapping their heads around is privacy law ties into this as well. So it's not all about work health and safety. The other aspect of law that connects to this is about privacy and how to contact people. So I've commended, that's just a resource that's available to everybody. It's not just for our members. Again, we want everybody to be actively answering those questions and working with their teams and their employees and getting that out there. So Laurie, actually, if you want to circulate the link even after the call, people can just go there and download the guide. It's a PDF. And if you wanted to join the Canberra Business Buzz, you'd be very welcome to. I might hand over to Linda, and maybe very briefly she can say these are the sorts of things we're hearing from employers. And then if we had any questions, probably more Linda than me, very happy to answer them. And if we can't answer them, I think, again, that's very much part of this process. It is a very iterative process at the moment, I'm finding. It's very much about understanding what employers are actually dealing with. And, we don't have the answer to every question, feeding that back to government, feeding that back to the policymakers in organisations like the Australian Chamber, and then actually trying to come back with answers. So very happy to try and do that for you as well. But on that note, I might hand over to Linda. A bit of an overview of what we're hearing and what we're seeing. And if anyone wants to ask any questions, I'm sure Linda will be happy to answer them.
Thanks so much.
I can certainly try. Thank you, Graham. Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda, as Graham has said. I am the Workplace Relations Manager at the Canberra Business Chamber. So my role is predominantly servicing our members by providing advice around things like employment contracts, developing workplace policies, enterprise agreements, those types of things. Most recently, as you can imagine, and as Graham alluded to, the inquiries that we've been receiving have been predominantly around the lockdown in the ACT. So the types of questions we've been getting are around what type of leave can our employees take while the lockdown is occurring. Also advice in relation to the legal implications of standing down employees and what that means for their leave entitlements. And also, obviously, as Graham's been mentioning this morning, how to implement a vaccine policy as well. So those are the main issues that I've been coming across since the end of last week. Again, as Graham mentioned, we've developed the policy, the guide for employers if you're considering to implement a vaccine policy in the workplace. And the guide, again, talks about predominantly how to communicate that message to your employees, things like vaccine liabilities if you are encouraging your employees to be vaccinated, and also obviously what the employer can do in terms of requesting evidence of the vaccine having taken place. Again, just to reiterate, the services that we can provide at the Chamber include the Canberra Business Buzz. So we've got a discussion thread there, and our members can go there and effectively build connections and networks with other members to discuss topics that might be concerning them around vaccines or those types of things. And also, just to mention, we have another resource on there just in case our members aren't aware of it, called the online shop. And that essentially has a range of templates, including employment contracts and policies in which you can tailor as to your business needs. And then you can even refer that back to me or someone like me, and I can have a look at that for you and just accommodate that to your business as well. So there's a range of services and ways in which we're trying to support members through these changing and transient times that we're currently facing. So I hope that that's a good introduction. If there's any questions, I'm happy to try and see if I can answer them.
Linda, just a quick one, and obviously this has been in so many different articles of late, but it's vaccines. It's it's continual discussion around that. What we do know is obviously all the vaccinations are doing is stopping death and severe cases, but it's not stopping the transmission of COVID. And certainly I think the reality that we're all facing now is COVID is part of our lives, that we have to look at what is going to be the new normal. And we're just starting a business strategy mentoring program to get the businesses together and work out what that new normal is going to look like and what have we got to prepare ourselves for. But, with that in mind, when it comes to, the guide and certainly, talking about vaccines with your staff, what we're trying to do obviously is prevent their own death. Is that, it's a fair estimation of what we're trying to do here? That's why it falls under WHS and our code of conduct to our staff.
Yes, that's right. It's definitely about the information dissemination aspect and just trying to improve the health literacy as much as possible. Ultimately, of course, it's up to the individual to decide what they want to do, but it's definitely about promoting information, promoting education, making sure that everybody is aware of the risk involved in not being vaccinated, and the risk that presents not only to themselves but the wider community, including their co-workers that they work with and potentially their clients and customers as well. So really driving home the message that of the health risks involved there.
Yeah, so an earlier conversation was around, you know, the government potentially coming out with more legislation that enables us to mandate it. But is that something that you would see as happening?
Well, I'm not sure if that would be a definitive thing that would happen, only because there are such legal risks involved in mandating vaccine rollouts. Obviously, as you've probably seen, SPC have recently mandated that their workers become fully vaccinated by, I think it's November of this year. Recently, Qantas have done something similar, making sure all their employees get vaccinated by March of next year. So you can see organisations picking up on this initiative to do something like this. I think ultimately it will depend on the 4 tiers aspect that the government has released in terms of the reasonableness as to if you can actually implement a vaccine rollout in your workplace. I'm not sure if everybody here is aware of the 4-tier regime that's been introduced. Just so you know, there's 4 tiers, and the first tier of the 4 tiers is where you have employees that work in a very high risk COVID environment, for example, employees that work in hotel quarantine, for example. So in the event that you were to give a direction to your employees to get vaccinated and you work in that kind of environment, it would be seen that the direction is more reasonable than if you were in a different type of environment. So it's very contextual.
Yeah. Would you expect that potentially teachers could be part of that? Because I suppose we're interacting with little kids in a lot of our activities, and at the moment we're just fearing that they haven't got access to the vaccine. And I know it's a big discussion item that, you know, how are we going to protect us? How are we going to protect the kids in our new normal?
Yes, unfortunately, I won't have the answer to that question. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think, Graham, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, Larissa, I'll jump in. I mean, to go back to your question, the position of government at the moment is very clearly, and I kind of know from past experience in health sector roles that, you know, mandating anything, including vaccination for government, is a very, very serious step. So government's view, both Commonwealth and around the states and territories, at the moment isn't about mandating vaccination. Their view very much is that's a business decision. As Linda said, you know, that 4-tier structure is in place to provide some guidance. There are the unions are at the moment opposed to mandating, so there's no accord between employer groups and unions, and we've seen, as Linda said, both SPC and Qantas. I guess one of the things that smaller organisations have raised, though, is if you're Qantas, you can take that as a test case and you can run it, and you know, to an extent you can if you're SPC as well. If you're a small business, it's the resources do you have to go through a legal challenge are much more limited. So at the moment, and there has been a conversation about this week with Michaela Cash and some of the industry bodies. But again, what's left, that is still very much the government's position is that's up to individual employers. And if it's going to be tested, it will be tested in the courts. And that's probably the current situation. There's not much, I wouldn't say there's a government appetite to mandate. And again, that's why, and there are some industries where their industry body will actually adopt that as a position. So mandatory vaccinations for our industry are necessary. But our view, and I guess that reflects the ACCI view as well at the moment, is very much that's an employer decision, and our role is to provide as much information and support for employers in navigating their way through what's there at the moment. Whether, as you say, that will shift. And I guess to pick up on your point about children, I mean, from where I'm sitting in Canberra, my kids are 11 and 8, and I think it's remote. You know, we're now seeing at-risk populations of kids under 10, whereas if you remember, the 2020 was very much actually children are safe and they're not at risk from the virus. Well, you know, the Delta variant has changed all that again, so it's just an indication of how quickly things can change. But looking at the case numbers here, we've got schools that are now exposure sites, and children, I think the 3-year-old is the youngest in Canberra, that actually has COVID. So very, very different situation. And that, of course, needs to adjust those 4 tiers that Linda's talking about. The policymakers need to be moving towards, okay, well, where do at-risk populations sit within those tiers?
Great. Well, we'll keep advocating for inclusion, particularly for people that are working with kids, that's for sure. Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you, Linda. David, did you have a quick question for Linda?
It was only a statement in a sense. I've been watching Florida. There's an interesting article popped up the other day. It's about the same size as Australia, and they're not mandating very much at all. They're accepting quite high loads of sickness and to some degree deaths. And to some degree what we're talking about is what is our society overall willing to accept in the way of problems that might come out of COVID, and watching what other societies, say in the Western world, like Florida, might be doing, whether it's right or wrong, might give us a bit of a view of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Linda, thank you so much for coming along. Feel free to stick around. I know we've gone over time, guys, but I think this has been a very worthwhile conversation. Is there any more questions on vaccines, COVID-related discussion before we go back quickly to Christina's question that had gone unanswered? I think that's great. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Laurie, thank you. I better drop off. And
yep, no problem.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yep, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah. Join us any Friday.
Thank you.
Thanks. Christina, sorry about that. Dave, you had a question for Christina.
Yeah, with the sun cancer, the skin cancer and skin things, back when I was a younger man in the 70s, I was an amphibious troop commander in the SAS, and we had to use a face cream every morning and sunscreen as part of our regime. And the idea was not actually for skin cancer; it was actually to stop salt ulcers and becoming a battle casualty from the environment. I still use oil of Olay or oil of Ulan, however you pronounce it, because that was what the medico's last wife thought that we should be using at the time. So is there any value in sort of trying to get our industry or an industry to have a regime like that? Something that happens as a regular thing. I do it every morning and every evening. I buy ladies sunscreen, but it's got sunscreen in it these days and has for about 3 decades.
Do I need to remind you that we're recording this? Oh, good. Go.
Yeah. So, just with your question, Dave. So what we're trying to do is obviously with things like skin protection and using sunscreen and having sun protection on you. I mean, that is definitely we hope that workplaces are complying with that. Because that is something that is so important. As we know, skin cancer is very much with the UV exposure, it is quite preventable, and that's why it is so important to be using all of these different mechanisms like sunscreen and proper sunshade and all of these things. So I think what our intervention is going to focus on is obviously using all of these recommendations and just making sure that it's effectively communicated to outdoor workers, which is obviously going to help them to comply more, and then obviously we should be able to see that reduction in skin cancer incident rates. So this survey is definitely going to help us understand all of those things, you know, and, you know, great insight there, you know, and feel free to share that in our online survey. But I also forgot to include in my talk that data will remain anonymous. So it's all non-identifiable data that we're collecting. So don't feel that, you know, your employers or even your data is going to be, employees, their data is going to be collected. It's just, you know, voluntary participation in an online survey that won't collect any of that personal information. The online survey will go live next week, early next week. So if you are interested to participate, I will very much love to hear from you. And I'll send, sorry, I started typing a message and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to send this now. And then it accidentally, half of it got sent to the chat while Graham was talking. So I was like, oh no.
Complete it now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll send you my details soon. But yes, please do get back to me today. I would love to hear from you, and your contribution is going to be so valuable. So thank you so much, Laurie, and everyone for listening.
My pleasure. And there's a sponsorship opportunity for you, Christina. Just Oil of Ulan or Olay, is that what it is? Dave, we'll hit them up for some sponsorship for you.
Great, thank you. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, Christina. That's great. And the contacts are in your chat there, guys. We'll finish the recording there, and thank you everyone for attending. We've got our usual happy hour at 4 o'clock this afternoon, so feel free to join us. But if you want to stick around, ask any other questions or talk to us in the non-recorded session, please feel free to do so. So have a great day, everyone. See you either this afternoon or next week.